here's what we've been told. We have heard that the reduction of the voting age and automatic voter registration is going to swell the electorate by, I think, almost 5.8 million voters. And that's supposed to be, I think, a 40% increase of the total electorate. Out of that, more than 1.2 million of these voters will be aged between 18 to 20 years old. And that demographic is only going to grow month by month. Now, having said all of that, I do think a lot of work will still need to be done to encourage all voters to vote at an election. Because many people, not simply youth, but even Gen X and Gen Y, most of them are apathetic voters. And let's be frank, if they haven't registered up until now, the likelihood is that they are apathetic voters. Yeah. Now, as far as the youth are concerned, the recent National Youth Survey of 2021 by Merdeka Center found that 70% of Malaysian youth are uninterested in politics. Now, in my view, I think the reason that they are uninterested in politics is probably because they don't fully comprehend how their vote connects to the money in their pockets, how their vote connects to securing food and a roof over their heads, how their vote connects to ensuring stability of their environment, their physical and online safety. Now, even the people that do understand the connection between the vote in their hand and the money in their pockets will still buy into the myth that their one vote in an election doesn't count. But that is a myth. Yeah, it is not true that your vote does not count. It is simply that there aren't enough working or effective platforms out there for ordinary people to make politicians listen and to make them care. And because of that, people think that their votes don't count. But what the actual issue is that many people don't understand the potential of their vote. People don't understand how to commoditize their vote. Many people think that the value of their vote is solely on election day at the ballot box. That is the myth. That is only the second most important use of your vote. The true power of your vote is not in how you voted yesterday, but how you are going to vote tomorrow at the next election. It is the period between elections that is the crucial period. Now, the National Youth Survey of 2021, that same youth survey, found that between 63 to 66% of youth think that politicians don't care what people think. But in truth, with a vote, you get a permanent seat at the table with politicians. Your vote can be used to get them to listen to you, to get them to do things for you ahead of voting. So because of your vote, what you get to do is to make it known to politicians what it is you want them to do, what policies you want them to enact, what are the changes you want in our political system. So your task is to find a way to speak up. And in order to do that, you must group up. In your lifetimes, the idea of fundamental liberties will also change. In fact, it is changing. Certain rights that we never previously considered critical have now taken on greater importance. I'm talking about rights like the right to clean water, to food security, to sustainable living. And all of these means that these rights will need to be protected by laws that Parliament makes today. And it means that it becomes more and more important that parliamentary scrutiny of government is done correctly in order to make sure that government continues to respect these rights. And I think the thing to realize is that politicians are going to make their decisions whether you vote for them or not. But you will have to live with the consequences of that. You and future generations will have to live with the consequences of that. So use your vote to take a seat at that table and speak up and group up. Accessibility to the democratic process in Malaysia has its issues, both in terms of geographical limitations, as well as social limitations, class distinctions as well. This is not simply in relation to access to voting, right? Just simply the election process. It also cuts across to Parliament and access to Parliament, access to state legislative assemblies. Routes are closed, routes are limited to those that are connected, and also even within the groups that are connected to specific social classes, specific political classes as well. But there's a different way of looking at it, and that is to think outside the box and to consider how we can create new platforms, new opportunities, and new channels, to take lessons from other countries and how other democracies do it, and to leverage mainly, in my view, on digital technology, because that is one route, one platform, and one channel that we are all eventually going to have, if not equal, but fairly close to equal access, I think, across the country, simply because it is going to become the main mode of communication, main channel of business as well, and commerce in the country. I think one of the main contributing factors is the lack of knowledge and the lack of really understanding, I think, about politics and how the political process works. So, that same survey that I referred to earlier, the National Youth Survey 2021 by Merdeka Center, that survey revealed that I think it's 79% of Malaysian youth between the ages of 18 to 22 felt that politics and government was too complicated and that they can't really understand what's going on. A lot of people have this misconception that politics and government is complicated because we don't learn it from first principles, like we do with math, like we do with geography, like we do with physics and biology. We are exposed to it through other channels, through the media. And these are not necessarily neutral channels or non-partisan sources of information. So that's already a problem for us. If you're trying to follow politics without understanding the underlying principles, then of course it's going to seem complicated. Of course, you're not going to immediately be able to follow what's going on. And of course, you're not going to feel confident enough about expressing an opinion. And of course, it then becomes easier for politicians and for the elites to make you feel like you don't know what you're talking about. Trouble is, what they're doing is so important and so directly relevant to your life that you cannot afford not to know. So, first things first, understanding the first principles of politics and government. We should have been taught this in schools, right? Like they do in other countries, right? Now, the second thing about understanding first principles is that it has to be available in the language that we all understand, in multiple languages. And that's something else that's missing as well in Malaysia, that the content, just basic content creation in different languages, how politics works, what government is, these things aren't available. But the thing is, today in the 21st century, it's pretty easy for anyone, if you just take the effort, to learn about politics and to learn about policy making and all the important first principles. Now, you just have to refer to the right sources. A lot of these materials are actually available for free and accessible online. So that's one place that I think youth who are interested to learn more can start. And the final thing I will say is this, another assurance is that once you do learn the basics of politics and policy making and of government, it will change how you view politics. Now, you may still feel a bit jaded, I can't take that away, but you will feel more confident about understanding how things work and also about expressing what it is you want. So, to my mind, whenever we talk about the issue of the integrity of our democratic institutions, I'm always struck by how we as a society, we don't seem to draw parallels between the expectations that are placed on us as individuals to make transparent, accountable, and honest decisions, and the expectations that are placed on our politicians to do so. At every stage of your life, you've probably been involved in an organization or a body of people that has had some system of check and balance in place. right? So if you were in school and university, you were probably a member of a club or a society, the exco of a club or a society, and you would have needed to be accountable. There would have been processes in place for you to be accountable to your teacher in charge, your bursar, your members. If you are part of a company or a firm, there is the board of directors that keeps the management level in check. There are the shareholders that keep the directors and the management level in check. There are, on a larger scale, on a regulatory scale, in Malaysia, we have Bank Negara, we have the Companies Commission, the Registrar of Societies, Bursa Malaysia, Securities Commission, MACC, all of this geared to keep companies, firms, and individuals, right? Local people like you and me, ordinary people, in check, making sure that there are checks and balances, that our decision-making is transparent and honest. The odd thing is, when we look at government and how the executive operates, and how certain institutions, like you've pointed out, like the election system, how that operates, suddenly that framework of checks and balances is not so detailed anymore. It is not so foolproof anymore. And you have to wonder why, right? Now, the problem isn't that we don't have the right structures in place. We do, like Parliament and the judiciary. The problem is that these institutions, and specifically Parliament, hasn't been empowered, hasn't been capacitated the way we see in other countries in order to do the job properly. Most people will understand that Parliament serves several functions, right? Lawmaking functions to approve bills, as well as oversight functions to scrutinize government action, to make sure that government processes, government policies, and administration is working as it should. But Parliament is also made out of individuals. Parliament is also made out of political parties. Parliament is also made out of factions, the opposition versus the government and government backbenchers, right? So when we look at empowering an institution like Parliament, we need to look at empowering all these different groups in different ways. We also need to understand that Parliament is also supposed to play the role of providing platforms, once again, for ordinary people like you and me, for voters to speak up, for voters to tell politicians what's going on and what needs to change. We see this again in other countries. We see the ability in other countries for ordinary citizens to present petitions to Parliament, for ordinary citizens to be able to participate in parliamentary committee inquiries. So these are the things that we need to try and find a way to improve in the Malaysian Parliament.